The salon was glass and gold. Everything about it whispered exclusive. Champagne trays, marble floors, velvet chairs with names no one could pronounce. A place where people didn't come to look better. They came to look like someone else entirely. Behind the counter, Madison flipped her blonde ponytail, barely looking up. She knew the type that walked in. But delicate, desperate. But the woman who entered now wasn't one of them. Her name was Roslyn. Mid-40s. Worn winter coat. Nails chipped. Hair pulled back with a drugstore clip. She paused in the entrance like she wasn't sure she was allowed inside. Madison narrowed her eyes. A woman like that didn't belong here. Not with those shoes. Not with that haircut. I have an appointment, Roslyn said. Her voice was soft. Careful. Madison checked the screen. Frowned. First-time client? Yes. For the holiday special. The online one. Roslyn pulled out a folded coupon. It shook in her hand. Madison took it. Fake smile. Barely concealed disdain. I'll let Cassie know, she said before turning. Not to Cassie, but to Ashley, the junior stylist standing by the espresso machine. She booked the promo. Madison sneered under her breath. A total charity case. Probably wants a miracle for $99. Ashley snorted. Loud enough for Roslyn to hear. Roslyn stood still. Frozen. Red rising in her cheeks. She looked at the door like she wanted to bolt. But she didn't. She just lowered her eyes. And waited. What none of them noticed was the man sitting quietly in the corner. Black jeans. Weathered boots. A simple motorcycle helmet resting beside his seat. He watched the whole thing. He had come in without fanfare. No publicist. No sunglasses. No name drop. He hadn't said a word. Until now. He stood. The movement was slow. Deliberate. The air shifted. Excuse me, he said softly. Madison turned. Sorry, you'll have to wait, sir. But then she saw him. Her eyes widened. Her breath caught. It was him. Keanu Reeves. In her salon. And he had heard everything. He walked toward Roslyn. Not Madison. Not Ashley. And with a calm, unshakable voice. He said just 5 words. You look like someone important. Roslyn blinked. As if the words weren't meant for her. I'm sorry, she asked, voice barely audible. Keanu smiled gently. Not the red carpet smile. Not the movie star grin. Just a quiet warmth that made the room feel smaller. I said, he repeated, you look like someone important. Behind the counter, Madison froze. Ashley stared. The air felt suddenly too bright. Roslyn gave a small, confused laugh. I'm not. Trust me. Keanu tilted his head. Are you sure? She opened her mouth to reply, then closed it. What could she say? That she worked 2 jobs? That she'd saved for months just to feel normal for one afternoon? That the boots on her feet were secondhand and too tight? I'm just trying something new, she said softly. A new look. Keanu nodded. That takes guts. Madison stepped forward, her voice syrup-sweet. Mr. Reeves, we didn't realize you'd. He didn't look at her. His gaze stayed on Roslyn. Unbothered. Patient. I've always thought, Keanu said quietly, that people who walk into a place they feel unwelcome are usually the strongest in the room. Madison's smile cracked. Ashley turned away, pretending to organize a tray of brushes. Roslyn shifted her weight. I didn't mean to cause trouble. You didn't, he said. You just walked through a door. That shouldn't be hard. A long silence followed. Cassie, the stylist Roslyn had actually booked with, emerged from the back, confused by the stillness. What's going on? Keanu glanced at her. Cassie. His tone was polite. Almost too polite. I believe Roslyn has an appointment with you. Cassie looked from Keanu, to Roslyn, to Madison. Then something clicked. The judgment. Her face changed. Yes. Of course, she said quickly. I've got time right now. Roslyn hesitated. But Keanu nodded once, a slight gesture, like passing a torch. She followed Cassie down the hall of mirrors, past the wall of hair products with French names, and disappeared into a private booth. Keanu sat back down. Madison tried again. If there's anything we can get you, champagne, espresso, on the house, of course. I'm good, Keanu said. His voice had the weight of a closed book. Ashley mumbled something and vanished into the break room. Cassie's voice drifted faintly from the back. You're gonna look amazing, Roslyn. And I'm sorry for what you walked into. Back at the reception desk, Madison swallowed hard. And Keanu just waited. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay. Roslyn sat in the tall leather chair, hands trembling in her lap. Cassie clipped a fresh smock around her shoulders and gently ran fingers through her hair. We can start with a deep treatment, she said softly. Some hydration, shape the ends, and I've got an idea for color, if you're open. Roslyn nodded. Not because she believed she'd look beautiful, but because for the first time in months, someone sounded kind. I haven't done this I don't know, she whispered. I usually just tie it back. Cassie smiled in the mirror. Today, we let it down. She walked over to the sink, turned on the warm water, and as Roslyn leaned her head back, something inside her unclenched. Meanwhile, at the front of the salon, Madison was panicking in slow motion. She had Googled, triple-checked. Yes, it really was him, Keanu Reeves. In her lobby. And worse. He'd caught her. Not being mean. Being small. She replayed the moment in her head. The coupon. The sneer. The way she'd said promo, like it was a disease. And now? Now he was still sitting there, calm as a monk, reading a magazine upside down. Do you want anything? She asked again, voice shaky. Maybe a private room? We can shut the salon down. Keanu looked up. Why? She blinked. I just mean, you probably don't want to be here with regular customers. He raised an eyebrow. I am a regular customer. Madison didn't know what to say. The other stylists were whispering now. Phones buzzing in pockets. Text threads lighting up. Keanu Reeves is here. Madison said what? Oh my God, he's just sitting there. In the back, Roslyn laughed for the first time in weeks. Cassie had made a joke about conditioner being more expensive than therapy. And Roslyn, cheeks pink from steam, smiled with her whole face. You have a great laugh, Cassie said, separating the strands gently. Roslyn blinked fast. That's not something I've heard lately. Cassie caught her reflection in the mirror. You'd be surprised how much beauty comes back when someone stops surviving and starts living again. It wasn't just a makeover. It was a reset. Out front, Madison fidgeted behind the counter. Keanu hadn't moved. And when a new client stepped in, an older woman with a thrift store purse and a hopeful look, Madison was ready to pounce with her old judgment. But Keanu looked up, met her eyes. Just once. And Madison didn't say a word. She offered a smile. A real one. The kind that cost something. Roslyn stared at her reflection. Cassie had just finished drying the last curl. The mirror didn't lie. But for once, it didn't hurt. Her hair framed her face softly, catching the light in warm amber tones. Her eyes looked bigger. Her skin brighter. But more than that, she looked awake. Like someone who had returned from far away. I feel different, she murmured. You look like yourself, Cassie said gently. And that's the whole point. In the waiting area, Keanu closed the magazine. Didn't check his phone. Didn't rush. He simply waited. The way a lighthouse waits for ships in fog. Madison stood at the espresso counter, silent now. No more commentary. No more smirks. She didn't understand what had shifted. Only that something had. Ashley reemerged, quieter than before. Was that? Did you know he was coming? She asked Madison in a whisper. No. Is he, with her? I don't think so. Then why is he here? Madison had no answer. But deep down, a whisper stirred. Because someone finally needed to be. The bell above the salon door chimed again. 2 women walked in, high heels, tight lips, real diamonds. The kind who didn't wait. They looked around, impatient. We have appointments, one said sharply. Is anyone working? Madison opened her mouth. Then paused. Behind them, Roslyn stepped out. Not in a gown. Not made over to look rich. but glowing. Still in her old coat, but wearing it differently, like armor, not apology. Cassie followed, a hand on her shoulder. Madison blinked. Even the rich women glanced, unsure. Roslyn looked toward the door. Then toward Keanu. He stood. Finished? He asked gently. She nodded. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. I think so. Good. He held the door open. But before she stepped out, she turned to Cassie. You're really good at what you do. Cassie shrugged. It helps when the person in the chair has a story. And then Roslyn walked out. Past Madison. Past Ashley. Not as someone invisible, but as someone seen. Keanu followed. No words. No press. Just the weight of his presence. The rich women watched them go, confused. Wait, was that? One whispered. Madison nodded slowly. Yeah. And for the first time in her career, she felt embarrassed not because someone had power, but because someone had dignity. Outside, the wind had picked up. Not cold, exactly, just real. It carried the smell of traffic, rain, and stories. Roslyn clutched her coat tighter, but not to hide. Only to feel it, to feel herself. Keanu walked beside her. Not close enough to hover. Not far enough to disappear. I hope I didn't make things worse, she said after a long moment. He glanced at her. Worse than what? She hesitated, then laughed just once. You know what I mean. He stopped walking, turned to her fully. Roslyn, he said gently, I've made a lot of people uncomfortable in expensive places. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. But not because of who I am, he added. Because of who they are when no one's watching. She looked down. Still, I wish I could have handled it better. You walked in, Keanu said. Stayed kind. Stayed quiet. That's handling it better than most. He gestured toward the sidewalk. Come on. You hungry? She blinked. What? There's a diner 2 blocks over. Best grilled cheese in town. She stared at him. You're serious? As a Rolex in a blender. Roslyn burst out laughing. The kind that startled her a little. It had been so long since something silly cracked through the weight. I could eat, she admitted. They walked the 2 blocks in silence. Not awkward silence. The kind that happens when 2 people both understand the value of not filling the air with noise. The diner was tiny. A neon sign buzzed overhead. Inside, a waitress in orthopedic shoes was wiping down a booth. Keanu held the door. Roslyn stepped in. This place didn't care about coupons. Didn't care what you wore. It smelled like toast and freedom. They slid into a corner booth. Keanu didn't pull out his phone. Didn't check a schedule. He just nodded at the waitress. The usual, he said. Then looked at Roslyn. You. Whatever comes with hot coffee. Smart choice. The waitress smiled. 2 minutes later, mugs hit the table, steaming and honest. Roslyn cupped hers like it was the first warmth she'd been allowed in months. So, Keanu said, after a sip. Want to tell me what brought you to that salon today? She stared at the coffee. Her reflection swam faintly in the surface. My daughter's getting married next month. Keanu's expression didn't change. But something in his posture softened. And I didn't want to show up looking like the mother who gave up. He nodded once. And said nothing. Because some sentences don't need fixing. They just need space. Roslyn stared into her coffee like it held a secret. Like if she looked hard enough, she'd see who she used to be. I raised her alone, she said, voice quiet but clear. Since she was 4. Keanu didn't nod. Didn't interrupt. Just listened. I used to have a good job, she continued. Receptionist at a dental office. Clean, steady, nothing fancy. But the practice closed during the pandemic. Never reopened. She sipped her coffee. After that it was piecemeal work. Temp gigs. Cleaning houses. And now. She trailed off. He waited. Now I'm just trying to hold it together long enough to smile in the family pictures. The waitress slid plates onto the table. Grilled cheese. Tomato soup. Crispy fries on the side. Roslyn blinked at the food like it was a surprise birthday. Then laughed softly. I didn't realize how hungry I was. Keanu smiled. Funny how that works. They ate in silence for a while. Not because there was nothing to say, but because not everything needs to be said right away. Finally, Roslyn looked up. Why did you help me? Keanu put down his sandwich. I didn't help you, he said. You helped them. She tilted her head. Who? The ones in that salon. The ones who forgot how easily it could be them on the other side of that counter. She stared at him. Madison. Ashley. They got to see what real strength looks like today. That's a gift. Roslyn gave a hollow chuckle. I didn't feel strong. I felt like I was about to cry. He raised an eyebrow. And you didn't. She sat back. Took another bite. Really tasted it. What about you? She asked. What were you doing in a salon like that? Keanu shrugged. Scouting locations for a short film. The director wanted something vapid but expensive. He smirked. Nailed it. Roslyn laughed again, louder this time. It turned a few heads in the diner. She didn't care. You ever wish people didn't recognize you? She asked. Sometimes, he said. But today wasn't one of those times. She studied his face. The calm behind the eyes. The stillness in the way he sat. You don't talk like most men. I don't hear like most men, he said simply. She let that hang in the air. Then finally she whispered, I thought I was going to walk into that salon, get ignored, maybe cry in a cab. I didn't expect any of this. Keanu picked up his coffee. You never know who's sitting in the corner. The grilled cheese was half-eaten, the soup untouched. But the moment, that strange, sacred quiet between two strangers, was completely full. Roslyn leaned back against the booth, her shoulders looser now. Like she'd exhaled a weight she didn't realize she'd been carrying. Can I ask you something weird? She said. Keanu looked up from his coffee. Of course. Why do you talk to people like me? He didn't blink. Didn't laugh. He just leaned forward, like the answer deserved attention. Because people like you remind me how lucky I am, he said. And how easy it is to forget. Roslyn looked down, her fingers wrapping around the mug. That's a nice thing to say. It's the truth. The pause. I used to think I was just unlucky, she said. But then I started noticing how certain doors never opened unless you looked a certain way or had the right last name. Keanu nodded. And sometimes I think people don't even realize they've become gatekeepers. He didn't need to reply. His silence said, I've seen it too. Across the diner, the waitress poured refills for a table of nurses. Two old men argued about baseball near the window. And for a few minutes, everything felt simple. Like the world had shrunk down to coffee, kindness, and two people who knew what it meant to carry invisible stories. Then Roslyn reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a photo. It was creased, the corners soft. Her daughter, smiling, radiant, arm hooked around a young man in a too-tight suit. She doesn't know how hard it's been lately, Roslyn whispered. I didn't want to make her feel guilty before the wedding. Keanu studied the picture with quiet reverence. She looks like she believes in good things. She does, Roslyn said. She always did. Even when we didn't have enough. That's rare. Roslyn hesitated. I just want to show up looking like I tried. You know. I do. Then Keanu reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small, folded envelope, slid it across the table without a word. Roslyn stared at it. Didn't touch it. What's this? A card, he said. That Salon, Cassie? She's not done with you. Appointments already set. Full treatment, no promo code required. Roslyn's eyes widened. No, I can't, Keanu, that's... He held up a hand. Just say yes. She looked down at the envelope. Her throat tightened. Thank you. But Keanu smiled. No need. You already paid for it, just by walking through that door today. Outside, the sky was changing. That pale golden hour light, where everything looks like a memory before it even happens. The next morning, the sun was soft and reluctant. A gray Los Angeles kind of light. The kind that doesn't dazzle, but wraps you gently if you let it. Roslyn stood outside the salon, holding the envelope. She hadn't opened it yet. Didn't need to. She had showered early, pressed her blouse flat, even put on mascara, though her hand had trembled. As she stepped inside, Madison looked up from the counter. But something was different in her face. The sarcasm had gone, replaced by something like restraint. "Cassie's expecting you," she said simply. Roslyn nodded, walked forward. Not fast, not apologetic. Cassie met her with a smile. "No nerves today?" she teased. "Only the normal ones," Roslyn said. "I'm still me." Cassie held up a hand mirror. Not for long. They disappeared into the back. Across town, Keanu sipped coffee in a quiet cafe. Alone. But not lonely. He was reading a dog-eared book, notes scribbled in the margins. The kind of book people only recommend when they're trying to show you who they are. A man passed by and did a double take. "Hey, are you?" Keanu looked up. "Just reading." Back at the salon, Cassie worked in careful, thoughtful rhythm. Scissors clicking. Brush bristles sweeping across cheeks. A hairdryer humming low like a lullaby. Roslyn sat still, eyes closed. Letting someone else take care of her for once. "Your skin's glowing," Cassie said, almost to herself. "It's probably nerves." "No," Cassie said. "It's the look of someone who's remembering they deserve to take up space." Roslyn swallowed hard. By the time the chair spun toward the mirror, Roslyn gasped. It wasn't glamour. It wasn't a makeover. It was restoration. Like a fog had lifted. And behind it, there she was. Roslyn didn't cry. But her hands trembled when she reached for the mirror. "I look like," she began, but couldn't finish. "You look like a mother about to walk her daughter down the aisle," Cassie said, smiling. Roslyn laughed, a sound that had grown warmer since yesterday. Maybe because someone had made space for it. 2 hours later, as she exited the salon, heads turned. But not for the usual reasons. Not because she was famous. Not because she wore something expensive. But because she walked like someone who had earned it. Every step. Every thread. And standing across the street, hands in his pockets, Keanu watched from a distance. He didn't wave. Didn't call out. He just nodded once. And turned down the street, disappearing into the city like a closing line in a poem. The wedding was held in a small vineyard just outside the city. Late afternoon sun. Linen canopies. Everything trimmed in soft lilac and gold. Roslyn stood at the edge of the garden path, hands clenched around a small clutch purse. Her dress was pale blue. Simple, elegant. The kind of fabric that catches the light and makes you forget price tags. People turned when she walked in. Not out of surprise, but because she glowed. Her daughter, Emily, rushed toward her. "Oh my God." She stopped. Eyes wide. "You look amazing." Roslyn smiled, a little embarrassed. "You really think so?" Emily laughed. "You look like you stepped out of a dream." "Seriously." And Roslyn held on a moment longer than she meant to. A man in a tailored gray suit, Emily's soon-to-be husband, came over. He kissed Roslyn's cheek. "You clean up good, Mom." "I had some help," she said softly. The guests took their seats. Music started. Vows were exchanged. And Roslyn sat in the front row, not feeling invisible. Not shrinking into her coat. She was seen. And this time, not just by her daughter, but by herself. After the ceremony, during the toast, Emily grabbed the mic. "There are a lot of people to thank," she said, beaming. "But I want to start with my mom." Roslyn froze slightly. Then Emily looked at her. Eyes wet, voice cracking. "You didn't just raise me. You taught me how to keep going when things fell apart. You showed me how to be kind in a world that isn't. And no matter how much or how little we had, you always gave everything." The room was silent. Then, soft applause. Some people stood. Roslyn's eyes brimmed with tears. But she didn't hide them. When the music picked up again, people danced. Drank champagne like it was air. Roslyn wandered to the edge of the terrace. The sky had turned lavender. That's when she felt it. A presence. She turned. He was there. Keanu. Black jacket. Unassuming. Holding a slice of cake on a napkin. I hope I'm not crashing, he said quietly. Roslyn stared at him. What are you doing here? He held out the cake. You forgot dessert. She laughed. Genuinely, fully. Keanu Reeves, she whispered, shaking her head. You are the strangest, kindest man I have ever met. He smiled. I've been called worse. They stood there in the glow of fairy lights, no cameras, no crowd. Just two people who had walked through the same city and seen it differently. Roslyn took a bite of cake. This is terrible, she said. He nodded. It's wedding cake. It's required to taste like regret. She laughed again, and this time, it sounded like closure. Later that night, after the bouquet had been tossed and the dance floor had emptied, Roslyn sat alone beneath a canopy of string lights. Shoes off. Heels forgotten. Just her and the stars and the aching softness that comes after joy. Keanu sat down beside her. No words. Just presence. They listened to the vineyard breathe. Cicadas. Wind in the grapevines. Faint laughter from somewhere in the distance. It went well, he said. Roslyn smiled. Better than I imagined. She looked so happy. You looked proud. I am. The pause. Then she asked, why did you really come tonight? He shrugged. I told you. You forgot cake. No, she said. Eyes fixed on him now. Why do you keep showing up? Keanu looked at the sky. Because sometimes the smallest kindness breaks the biggest curse. Roslyn tilted her head. What curse? The one that says you're not worth the seat. The room. The moment. She said nothing. And, he added quietly, because I've known what it's like to feel invisible. To walk into a place and feel like you're not supposed to be there. But sometimes, being seen by one person can reset everything. Roslyn blinked fast. You're a strange man, she said again. But I think you're right. He smiled. And I think you've always been more than right. You just forgot for a while. Behind them, someone started playing an old Sinatra song through a Bluetooth speaker. So gentle. Roslyn looked over. Do you dance? Keanu considered it. I move well when I'm being shot at. She stood, held out her hand. No explosions here. Just music. He took it, stood slowly, and under the canopy of tired bulbs, with no one watching and no flashbulbs in sight, Keanu Reeves and Roslyn danced. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. Two people whose paths crossed in the middle of an expensive room neither of them truly belonged to, now swaying like they'd built it from scratch. She didn't ask for anything. He didn't offer advice. They just moved slowly in the night, like two survivors who no longer needed to survive alone. The next morning, Roslyn stood in front of her bathroom mirror. No makeup. No dress. Just her. And she smiled. Not because of the hair. Not because of the dress. Because of everything else. She looked like someone who had weathered a storm and decided the wind no longer owned her. She made coffee, sat at the kitchen table in silence. And for once, it didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace. Her phone buzzed. A message from Emily. Can't stop smiling. You were glowing last night. Thank you for everything, Mom. Roslyn stared at the screen, then whispered aloud. No, thank you. Meanwhile, across the city, in a quiet garage filled with motorcycles and old jazz records, Keanu wiped his hands on a rag. He'd spent the morning fixing a faulty brake light. It had taken longer than it should have. He didn't mind. His phone buzzed too. Cassie, thought you'd want to know, Roslyn's photo is now on our wall of transformation. She said she never felt more herself. Also, Madison started offering free first-time appointments. Quietly. Without fanfare. Keanu read it twice. Then set the phone down. Let the silence stretch. Outside the garage, a breeze picked up. Smelled like pavement and potential. He strapped on his helmet. Fired up the bike. He didn't ride fast. He never did. He just rode steady. Unbothered. Like someone not rushing to be seen, but always arriving exactly where he needs to be. Back at the salon, Madison stood at the counter. Hair pulled into a neater bun than usual. No lip gloss. No jokes. She was reviewing resumes, something she usually delegated. Cassie walked by, sipping tea. "She's different now," one of the junior stylists whispered. Cassie nodded. She saw a reflection she wasn't ready for. And in a small frame near the waiting area, next to glossy magazine clippings and luxury product ads, hung a photograph. Roslyn, head high, eyes bright, smiling like someone who had stepped into the room and decided never to apologize again. Beneath it, a simple caption: "Confidence isn't loud. It's honest." Weeks passed. Seasons shifted quietly, like furniture in a sleeping house. Roslyn returned to her routines, but everything was different. Not because life had magically changed, but because she had. She still worked the same hours, still rode the same crowded bus. But her posture was different. Her presence, undeniable. People said, "Good morning." Men stood to offer their seats. Teenagers asked where she got her coat. She didn't shrink anymore. She arrived. One morning, as she stepped out of her apartment building, a young woman was struggling with a stroller and 2 bags. Roslyn didn't hesitate. She walked over, took one of the bags, offered a soft smile. The woman blinked, surprised. "Thank you," she said. "Most people don't notice." "I used to think that too," Roslyn replied. "But someone noticed me when I didn't expect it." She didn't say his name. She didn't need to. Later that day, she passed a store window and saw her reflection. Hair tied up. Simple blouse. No glamour. But the way she walked made the glass look like a runway. Inside the salon, the photo was still there, framed, untouched. And often, new clients would ask, "Who is she?" Cassie always smiled. "She's the reason we changed." Back in the city, Keanu stepped out of a cafe, helmet in hand. A barista followed him. "Hey, man, can I ask you something?" Keanu turned. "Sure." "That Salon thing. Was that real? Someone posted about it. Said you stood up for a woman nobody noticed." Keanu paused. Then said, she didn't need someone to stand up for her. Just someone who wouldn't look away. And then he slid on his helmet, mounted the bike, and rode off. No fanfare. No headline. Just the engine's soft roar as he vanished into traffic like a ghost who leaves behind truth instead of footprints. Because Keanu Reeves wasn't there to save anyone. He was there to remind them that the smallest acts can undo the loudest cruelty. And sometimes, a room changes forever, just because someone dared to walk in and see what everyone else refused to.